My wife cheated on me, tried to scam me for money, and now she's accusing me of domestic violence? Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. My wife, Vanessa Arkwood's first love, was dying. When she heard this news, she was lying under me. It was our wedding night. Vanessa pushed me away emphatically, swiftly dressed up, explaining urgently, "I need to go see Zach. We can continue next time." After saying that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Watching her disappearing figure, I calmly got up and got dressed as if nothing happened. Divorcing the day after the wedding wouldn't be impossible. When I received Vanessa's call, I was on my second pack of cigarettes. A bright male voice came through the call. "I'm so sorry, bro, because of our little game your wedding night was ruined. It's just that Vanessa is so impulsive. She doesn't even understand. She is somebody's wife now. Don't worry, I've already told her off for you. This won't happen again." Immediately after, Vanessa's indifferent voice came from the other side. "It's just the wedding night, no big deal if it's gone." I heard the pride in her voice when she next words, "He begged me to have the wedding. He wouldn't dare to have any objections just because of our missing wedding night." Speaking into the phone, she said, "If you have complaints, let's divorce then." Directing her speech to Zach while still speaking to me, she said, "You've done nothing wrong. Why should you apologize to him?" It seemed they had forgotten that they were on a phone call. I heard them talking to each other. Vanessa asked, "What game are you guys playing? I want to play too." Then Zach said, "Flower, I'm not your groom. You can't be so willful anymore." What followed was the man's helpless sigh. As if remembering that they were talking on the phone, Zach said, "Bro, I will properly scold her. You should rest early." Suddenly, the cigarette in my hand seemed nauseating. I hung up the phone without uttering a word. Looking up, the wedding decorations spilling happiness could be seen in the room. Every single piece of decoration seemed to be mocking me, a man who was abandoned by his wife right on the wedding night. The fact that she left me right on the wedding night gave me ample time to think. Indeed, it was just as Vanessa said, our marriage was something I begged for. And it wasn't that she had agreed after a few attempts. I was the persistent one. After begging nonstop for 3 months, she finally agreed. But on her terms and conditions. She demanded no ring ceremony, no walking down the aisle, just a simple meal. Though it was quite different from my dream wedding, I didn't mind at all. After all, the bride was the one I dreamed of. For me, as long as she was the bride, that was enough. However, my dream shattered on our wedding night. When we were about to reach our climax, her exclusive ringtone sounded on her phone. It was her first love, Zach Emron. She held me back with her hand, asking me to wait, which I did, stopping in place. Then, she heard that Zach was dying, and her face instantly turned pale. She roughly pushed me, saying she had to go look for him as he was dying. From ending the call to slamming the door and leaving, it wasn't even 10 minutes. While leaving, she expressionlessly turned to say, "Let's continue later." The moment the front door of the living room closed, the door in my heart, the one for her, also closed on her. The notification from my phone pulled me back from my thoughts. "I'm going to watch the sunrise with a group of friends. I want seafood porridge when I return tomorrow. Don't add spring onions. Zach doesn't like it." Looking at the message, wondering just how much of a fool I must appear to her, she left me alone on the wedding night, messaged me that she would go watch the sunrise with her first love, and then ordered seafood porridge for her first love on the second day of our marriage. I closed my eyes, suppressing my inner resentment, typed a message on the phone. "After you're done watching the sunrise, let's go get a divorce." After sending the message, I stood up to strip the room bare of all the wedding decorations. Seeing the decoration trashed on the floor made my heart finally feel at ease. Vanessa came home the next day. I was enjoying a big bowl of beef noodles. Hearing the sound of the door opening, I raised my head to glance at her. Sure enough, she was wearing Zach's shirt on her upper body and legs bare. Whenever she returned from a night out with her group of friends, she would invariably be wearing Zach's clothes. This time was no different. We always argued every time she returned in his shirt after the friends' night out. I couldn't help but wonder if their group of friends only consisted of Zach and her. I cared a lot about the lack of boundaries in their relationship. Every time Vanessa dismissively replied, "Zach and I are history. There's nothing I can do if this bothers you." She even tried to persuade me to see things from this perspective, affirming that regardless of what she did, she was still my fiancée. As she entered the living room, she walked up to the dining table and sat down opposite me. She glanced around at the tabletop with a slight frown. "Where's the seafood porridge? Is it still on the stove?" Then she looked at my beef noodles with a deeper frown. "Just look at yourself. You're already so fat, yet you're still eating this greasy food." Disgust in her tone, she said, "Can't you learn from Zach? If you can't compete with his looks or height, at least keep a good figure. Otherwise, it'd be embarrassing to be seen with you." During our 5 years together, she has had high demands for my figure. Blinded in love, I ate boiled vegetables and boiled meat for almost every meal just to please her. But to no avail. The more I watched my diet, the more she felt disgusted of me. As a result, I was diagnosed with malnutrition in the recent health examination. The doctor reviewing the reports looked at me with an expression full of confusion. He probably couldn't understand why a person who was always dressed so elegantly was suffering from malnutrition. As I finished my last bite of noodles, Vanessa's patience seemed to be wearing thin. She knocked on the table impatiently, urging me, "Hurry up! Pack the porridge into the thermos. Zach is waiting at home." I looked at the woman sitting across from me. She was one I had loved for so many years, and calmly asked, "Didn't you see the message about our divorce yesterday?" Vanessa paused for a moment as if she had only just remembered. "I saw it. What about it? You can't bear to let go anyway. Every time you say we should break up, you come back crying and begging me," she said with a high and mighty attitude. "This time I won't argue with you. Just pack the porridge for me before I lose my patience." Ignoring her, pushing my chair back and calmly said to her, "Vanessa Arkwood, I'm serious this time though. Let's get a divorce." She was caught off guard. She stood up, looking at me with a half-smiling expression. "Daniel Walton, so you got guts after holding a wedding ceremony? Ditching halfway through the event makes you unable to tolerate things? Why didn't you show this feisty side before?" Letting her say whatever she wanted, I put on my coat and stood at the doorway, emotionless, and said, "Let's go. I only took leave for today." An enraged Vanessa retorted, "Fine. Whoever backs out is a coward." With that, she walked out with me. However, the divorce didn't go through in the end. It was no other reason. She was called away by Zach, with a single call right at the door of the registrar of divorce. As for what reason, I no longer care. Anyway, this is not the first time. But I do want to ponder why Zach always calls right on time. Whether it was wedding night, the divorce, or even the time Vanessa and I were dating. After several instances of Zach calling her away at the perfect timing in the past, I wondered if the same fate awaited our wedding night. Who knew that my thoughts would come true? In the beginning, when imagining such a situation, I thought it would make me very angry, unable to maintain my composure, and even resort to violence. However, when things actually happened, there was a surprising calm, a sense of, it is just as I thought. Although the divorce didn't work out, there was no need to waste the holiday. So I drove to a law firm and asked a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. There was not much matrimonial property between us, so I didn't have to worry about dividing assets. After getting the divorce agreement ready, I called a childhood friend, Peter Hanks, to have a meal. When we met, he teased me, "Can't bear to part with Vanessa just a day after your wedding?" I ran my fingers through my hair and laughed before replying, "Getting ready to divorce." Peter was stunned for a few seconds and unexpectedly said, "Congrats." And then, patting my shoulder, he commented, "Daniel, you've finally shaken the water out of your head. Vanessa is not an easygoing woman. I've seen her hugging and cuddling with men in the bar several times. You were so deeply in love with her that I didn't want to tell you. Images of Peter holding back from saying something after the mention of Vanessa several times surfaced in my mind. The bystander's view is indeed clearer. That won't happen anymore. Have a few drinks with me. After saying that, I poured all the drink from the glass down the throat. By the time we ate and had drunk enough, it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. When reaching home upon opening the door, I saw Vanessa in a black slip dress. She was chatting with someone through a video call in the living room. Noticing me, she lazily ended the video call. From where I saw her, the way she was dressed was equivalent to not wearing anything. With her little movement, her plump breasts popped out of her dress. She seemed unaware of it though. Whatever, I didn't mind, and directly past her to take a shower. When I was about to finish showering, a soft body pressed against my back. Vanessa leaned into my ear and whispered, her voice filled with allure, "Hubby, let's relive our wedding night." Had she taken the initiative earlier, I would have been excited for the whole night. Regardless, now my heart was as calm as a monk's. Turning around, I pushed her away, promptly put on my clothes, and calmly looked back at her. "Vanessa, stay away from me." It took her a minute to understand what had happened, and then she pointed at me angrily and cursed, "Stay away? Who do you think you are? I've actively asked for reconciliation from you. What else do you want? Do you think I want to see you? If it wasn't for Zach persuading me to make up with you, I wouldn't even come home today." Listening to her lashing out at me, a hint of mocking smile crept up on my lips. "So you can leave now. Pack your things and go to your ex-lover's home. Don't stay here with me anymore." Suddenly, Vanessa's look changed, reacting as if she had just understood everything and said scornfully, "Apart from being jealous of Zach, what else can you do? Since you can't stand my friendship with Zach, then let's just get done with it. Why don't you follow me to register for divorce now? I should have gone through with divorce procedures this morning itself, then waited for you to beg me to take you back." She said a lot with confidence rooted in my previous behavior of asking for patching up every time we broke up. "Just now, I offered you a chance and you refused it. Now go sleep in the guest room." Having put the order, she put on her bathrobe and looked down at me arrogantly. She was waiting for me to beg for her forgiveness. I knew that well. In the past, every time we quarreled, it was always me who tried every means to reconcile, and even a few times, I kneeled to beg her. She thought I was the same old Daniel. It wasn't her fault after all. With time, she had become accustomed to it. Every quarrel and Cold War always ended with me backing down. Vanessa was watching me as I walked to the bed. She smirked thinking, just as before, couldn't wait to come back to me. Then, I took my pillow and quilt, walked out of the room, and went into the guest room. I ignored the astonishment on Vanessa's face behind me as I slammed shut the door. The next morning brought great surprise and amusement to me. I saw Vanessa cooking breakfast. "Honey, are you awake? Breakfast is ready." Seeing me emerge, she placed a pot of beef porridge on the dining table and beckoned me over. I watched her in with sheer surprise, finding it hard not to suspect the porridge was poisoned. Vanessa's cooking skills are quite exceptional, but this was the first time she had cooked for me. In the past, when I found out she could cook, I begged her ardently to make a meal for me. She reflexively shook off my hand and said impatiently, "Are you looking for a girlfriend or a maid? If you insist on me cooking, we should break up." The words "break up" immediately made me back down. Back then, I felt like my request to cook a meal for me brought some bad memories for her. So I apologized many times before deciding not to bring up the subject again. However, sometime later, I found through Zach's social media that Vanessa had learned to cook specifically for him. When they were together, she was the one who cooked. So love and lack thereof had a stark contrast in this moment. I stared deeply at the beef porridge and said, "Thank you, but I won't be eating." Upon hearing the words, Vanessa's face turned extremely unpleasant once again, and she directly placed her bowl and spoon on the table with a clang. "Daniel, what do you mean now? Didn't you always beg me shamelessly to cook for you before, and now that I've done it, you don't want to eat? You're giving me a hard time." Taking the topic back to our wedding night, she spoke, "So what if it's our wedding night? Is such a small thing worth making a fuss? Weren't we just fine before? What is the matter with you now? Yes, I loved her before, so I tolerated her every time. But what did I get in return? It was accusation and injury one after another. I looked at her coldly. Vanessa, I'm allergic to beef. A trace of embarrassment flashed across her face, but she still stubbornly said, I didn't know, you never told me. It would be wrong to say I wasn't affected. Of course, I was sad. Giving her a depressed smile, I lightly said, 5 years, Vanessa. We have been together for 5 years. You remember very clearly that Zach doesn't eat onions, but you don't know that I am allergic to beef. Is it that I didn't say it? Or you simply didn't care? Perhaps my words hit Vanessa's sore spot, and she immediately sprung up and accused me as usual. So what if I didn't know you were allergic to beef? Is it necessary to make such a big deal out of it? If you don't eat it, there are plenty of people who will. I nodded my head. Then you might as well give it to someone else. After saying that, I walked out the door to go to work. During a break in the office, I saw the update on Zach's social media. The beef porridge cooked by Vanessa is amazing. Some people don't know how lucky they are. The photo attached showed Vanessa serving him. I silently hit the like button and began to immerse myself in work. During lunch break, Peter came to me, saying that he had a major project to discuss with me. He brought an energy project plan to discuss with me. When talking about his studio, the glow in his eyes was so dazzling. At the end of his pitch, he patted my shoulder and persuaded me, Danila, my research results coupled with your capabilities, we are bound to succeed. His pitch was quite convincing. Upon hearing what he had to say, I agreed without hesitation. His enthusiasm was something I lacked for a long time. In the 5 years with Vanessa, I nearly forgot what I used to be like. Today, his positivity woke the real Daniel yet again. After we started dating, I resigned from my position as a sales director at the previous company. Opted for a smaller company, working from 9 to 5 every day. When my friends saw me, they all said that I had changed. At that time, I didn't take them seriously, saying, "This is for love, you single souls wouldn't understand." All my loud talks back then sounded more and more painful now. After my discussion with Peter, I submitted my resignation to the company again, but it was for me. My manager informed me that at the end of the month, I would have to hand over the work. And then I was free. There was no need to report to work from then on. That day before leaving office, I sent Vanessa a message. "Come home early tonight. We need to talk about the divorce." As expected, I waited until midnight, but no one came. Instead, I saw that Zach updated his social media again. Wished to go to an Idol concert with the one I love on my 18th birthday. Realized it on my 26th birthday. There was a picture of the two wearing a couple outfit at the concert. The sight of the photograph had my patience with the two of them exhausted at that moment. I commented under Zach's moment, "No more wishes needed. Send Vanessa back for a divorce. And you two can do whatever you want." Not less than 10 minutes had passed after the comment when Vanessa called up. As soon as I answered, she bombarded angry curses. "Daniel, that's enough. It's Zach's birthday. Are you deliberately trying to upset everyone? For such a small thing, you're being calculative? I must have been blind to have married you." I chuckled softly, unbothered by whatever she was saying. "Vanessa, aren't you fed up with me? Don't you want to be with someone perfect like Zach? But see, the more you drag this on, the more it seems like you can't bear to divorce me." She was silenced by my words. "Meet me at the registrar of divorce at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Whoever doesn't show up is a coward." With that, returning her word to her, I hung up the phone. I slept amazingly well, a dreamless night. The next morning, I took half a day off. When my boss asked me the reason for my leave, I candidly replied, "I'm taking time off to get a divorce." He was silent. I waited for more than an hour at the registrar, but Vanessa did not show up. Just as I was about to call her, I received a message from her instead. A picture of an airplane ticket, saying the company had arranged a business trip for her at the last minute. The matter of divorce would be talked about when she returned. Since she was away, I was helpless. All I could do was to take this opportunity to visit Peter's studio, see the place where I would be working in the future. Seeing me, Peter led me straight to an empty office, looking at me proudly. "Daniel, this is the office prepared for you. Our studio might be small now, but it has everything you need. All it misses right now is you," he added. Looking at the working atmosphere there, I am already looking forward to it. Peter took out the project plan. "Since you're here, let's talk about the upcoming plan." We spent the entire morning brainstorming. Though it was tiring, there was an indescribable sense of satisfaction in it. For the next 2 days, I hurried to Peter's studio after work to discuss plans. Every day was much more fulfilling than before. Then came Friday, which was my last day at the company. After work, some of my colleagues who are quite close to me took me out for a farewell dinner. After finishing our meal and drinking cups of tea, I went to the restroom. On my way back, while passing a private room, I overheard a familiar voice coming from inside. "Vanessa, didn't you always express your profound dislike for Daniel? Then why aren't you agreeing to divorce him?" Vanessa responded with a sarcastic laugh. "I did indeed despise him, but if his father hadn't used his life savings as a marriage gift, I wouldn't have married him. Just being with him was a rash decision made out of spite for Zach." Overcome by curiosity, her friend couldn't resist asking, "How much did his father give you for the gift?" Peeping through the narrow gap in the door, I saw Vanessa hold up 5 fingers. Her friend froze for a moment, then exclaimed in shock, "500,000? Vanessa nodded proudly. "Yes, since Zach was planning on starting his own company, I decided to invest these 500,000 in him." Her friend laughed heartily. "Wow, some people sell their daughters, but Daniel's parents just paid to get rid of their son." Vanessa burst into laughter at the comment, bending over with mirth. The conversation left me feeling like a dormant volcano that had suddenly erupted in my heart. No wonder the last time I went home to visit my parents, the elderly couple kept asking us about our relationship. My anger was my guilt towards my parents. I got to know Vanessa through a blind date. At our first meeting, she was wearing a white dress, the radiant smile on her face deeply etched into my heart. After that day, I started inviting her out for meals or movies now and then. She always agreed, but her attitude towards me was always lukewarm. 3 months passed like that. One day she suddenly asked me if I liked her, if I wanted to be her boyfriend. I was surprised, but I agreed the next second. Since then, we were together for 4 years, until I proposed marriage to her more than 20 times. Every time she turned me down, saying it was too soon. When I had convinced myself that a loving couple doesn't necessarily have to get married, she proposed to me, and we registered our marriage the next day. I thought she had come around, not realizing that she had been bought over by money. I left the restaurant with a lot of new information, all the time pretending in front of my colleagues as if nothing happened. Then I contacted a lawyer to consult about the marriage gift. The lawyer soon responded saying that if there was evidence, she had to return every single penny, which meant she had to leave penniless. After that, I asked an acquaintance to introduce a private investigator to me. When I learned the truth about how Vanessa agreed to marry me and the real reason behind this marriage, I couldn't rest at all. The following day, I visited my parents. We talked for a bit, and then gradually the topic of discussion turned to my marriage and marriage gift. Only after much insistence did my parents unravel the truth. Vanessa told her friend that my father gave her 500,000 as a marriage gift, but the fact was that she casually demanded the money with no real intention to marry me. She had no idea that my parents would agree for my sake. And when she saw them pull out $500,000, her greed for the money led her accept to the marriage proposal. Looking at my aging parents, I realized that once they were young and beautiful, now that beauty was replaced by the gray temples and wrinkles over the skin, my heart was filled with an indescribable bitterness. I didn't want to hurt them further, nor did want to alert Vanessa. Thinking about it, I refrained from discussing divorce with Vanessa. She didn't return home until the 5th day after her business trip. While she was away, I packed up a few clothes and moved into Peter's house. During this time, Vanessa texted me every day, asking when I was coming back home, as she had gotten accustomed to being spoiled due to my backtracking all the time. I used it to pacify her while simultaneously looking through the evidence sent over by the detective. Each photograph and hotel check-in record was akin to having a bucket of cold water poured into my heart. It turned out that Vanessa and Zach have always been in an ambiguous relationship. Almost every time Vanessa worked overtime, she was entangled with Zach in a hotel. The so-called business trip she mentioned a few days ago was nothing but just a few days at Zach's house. All this was done to avoid discussing divorce with me. They didn't know that I had learned about the marriage gift, and were under the impression that I was kept in the dark about it. They kept buying time. I handed all the evidence to my lawyer and asked him to handle it. Out of sight, out of mind. Yet, Vanessa kept on bothering me insistently. One day, a notification popped up on my phone. It was from the house monitoring system detecting suspicious movements. Tapping the video, I did not expect to see them too in the living room. I won't need that house anymore as it was bought as our home after marriage. So, temporarily let it go, and instead of feeling bothered, notified my lawyer and filed for divorce. This evidence would be enough to make her leave without a penny. The day Vanessa received the notice, she was frantic and called me. "Daniel, you are making me leave penniless because of this trivial matter? Are you dreaming? I never thought you'd be this kind of person, entirely consumed by money. I misjudged you." Waiting for her to finish, I calmly listened to her ranting. Once she finished, there was a long pause which gave her the feeling that I had hung up. After I had enough fun letting her wait and lose her patience, I replied, "According to the civil code, the party who cheats is the one who needs to leave empty-handed." "What kind of cheating? What do you mean?" My words were beyond her imagination. There was a hint of hidden panic in Vanessa's voice. I chuckled coldly. "In your eyes, I'm no better than an idiot, right? You have been fooling around under my nose and kept it from me for 5 years. We'll meet in court." Without giving her a chance to react, I hung up. Then, lazily stretching my body and yawning in boredom, I went back to my work. However, before I could start my work, my lawyer messaged me about an important issue to be discussed in his office. Wondering what was so urgent, I took my phone and headed to his office. When the lawyer saw me come, he asked me to take a seat and then said, "Mr. Daniel, you need to see this video." No sooner had I sat down than he showed the surveillance footage from that day at my house. I was about to ask what's worth watching. It was just a video of a shameless pair enjoying a secret tryst. Looking at my confusion, the lawyer quickly dragged the progress bar of the video to the last 5 minutes, where Vanessa and Zach were together, leaning on each other. He took a drag of smoke while holding Vanessa and asked, "Does Daniel still not know he has been meeting with fake versions of your parents?" Vanessa sneered disdainfully and replied, "That fool definitely has no clue. My parents are not people he can meet casually. He has not mentioned divorce to me recently. Perhaps he regrets it now. In a few days, I will give him a little sweetness, and he will turn back like a dog." Zach lovingly stroked Vanessa's head, his voice full of pity. "Vanessa, I'm sorry you have suffered for me. When my company becomes successful, I will treat you well." Vanessa looked at him, her face filled with emotion. "Everything is worth it for you." With that, the video ended. Every time I see them together, there is a piece of new information about their cheating and fraud. I took a few deep breaths to suppress the anger in my heart. I asked the lawyer if their behavior was illegal. According to him, it was not exactly illegal, but we could demand that she refund every penny of the marriage gifts, and even seek additional compensation. His words made me feel a little better. Initially, after finding shreds of evidence of her infidelity, I thought Vanessa was just having an affair, but it turned out I was just part of their plan all along. My disgust for her and self-blame had no limit. Could be said that love makes one blind. In my case, it made me a fool. In fact, it wasn't her who fooled me, it was me who let her. Loving someone isn't wrong, but loving the wrong person is wrong. Soon it was the day of the court session. Before the trial, Vanessa put on an act, begging for my forgiveness and failing in her attempt. The court session began with both parties laying their sides in front of the court. Vanessa continued her poor acting to gather sympathy. However, when it was my turn, they saw me presenting my evidence piece by piece, and the color drained from her face gradually. Finally, my lawyer submitted the video as evidence and Vanessa's face turned completely pale. Due to our comprehensive evidence, the judge ruled an immediate divorce. Vanessa was directed to refund the entirety of the marriage gifts and compensate me with $50,000 for mental distress. As we were leaving the courthouse, Vanessa, like a mad woman, charged at me. "Daniel, how could you be so malicious, setting up monitoring at home?" With a cold smirk, I retorted, "Vanessa, why don't you talk about the disgusting things you did? You should consider yourself lucky. The things you've done aren't severe enough for a sentence. Otherwise, you would definitively put yourself in jail." Vanessa was confused as to why she couldn't understand why and how I had suddenly changed. I gave a light laugh and said, "Suddenly, my mind got clearer." As I turned to leave, remembered that she's still living in the house that was bought for our marriage. Turning back to her, I said, "Vanessa, you have 3 days to move out of my house, or don't blame me for being rude." After the divorce, I planned on selling that house and moving in with my parents. Bang! The moment the studio door opened, fireworks suddenly went off. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations to Director Walton for escaping from misery. It was Peter and a group of colleagues waiting to greet me at the door. I waved grandly and announced, "To celebrate my newfound singlehood, let's have a dinner party tonight. My treat." Everyone was about the same age. They cheered for me, screaming on top of their voices. I knew Peter's intentions. After all, I had loved Vanessa for so many years, and a sudden divorce might be hard to swallow. But the moment the judge's gavel fell, a weight was lifted off my shoulders. There wasn't a hint of sorrow or reluctance. Perhaps my love for her had long been worn away because of her constant hurts. What surprised me was that Vanessa showed up at my studio the next day. She wore the white dress that she had worn when we first met. She stood at the door of the studio waiting for me. When I saw standing, it annoyed me. I asked indifferently, "What brings you here?" Vanessa looked at me with her eyes welling up slightly. "Daniel, are you going to be this heartless towards me? Do you want to kick me out so badly?" It was then I remembered, after the divorce yesterday, that the house agent must have taken people to look at the house. The house was newly renovated and the location was good. Most importantly, the price was reduced by 10% and all the furniture was included in the deal to facilitate a quick sale. I looked at her coldly. Is it useful trying to play the emotional card at this point? Looking deeply at her, I punched her with a little more facts. Or is it that Zach hasn't given you a place to stay? Right? Seems like you're the one who paid the rent for his house. Huh. Only after the detective had investigated Vanessa did I realize that Zach was a kept man. His monthly salary is only $3,500, but his living standards are quite high. Vanessa gave him money every month to cover his rent. Her salary was barely enough for both of them, so at that time, she would concoct various excuses each month to borrow money from me. At first, she'd think of some reasons, but as time passed, every time she asked for money, it was straight, "Daniel, transfer me $20,000 quickly." My words sank deep into Vanessa's heart, causing her expressions to sour. Despite her discomfort, she bore with it for the sake of money. "Daniel, I know that you're angry with me. You wouldn't really have the heart to be this ruthless, right? That house has our memories together. You can't sell it." Looking at her hypocritical face, I impatiently responded, "TCH, don't say words that make me sick. And leave. Don't even think of coming here to bother me again." Seeing her dazed and stunned look, I told her, "Let me call the security and throw you out. And if you don't leave or come back to pester me, I don't mind legally reclaiming the money you spent on Zach during our marriage." Vanessa glared at me fiercely upon hearing this. "Daniel, you can say this to me today, because I am down, but remember that one day when Zach succeeds, you will have to bear the consequences." She swayed away after her declaration. It didn't seem that she would stop. She was likely to change her ways to pester me. To avoid Vanessa, I requested Peter to let me handle overseas projects or the ones needing travel. Upon hearing my request, he immediately arranged a project in Argentina. My visa, flight, and hotel booking were done at a pace that was beyond my expectations. But since I had fallen into the snare, I had to go through with it. The day after my visa came in, I flew to Argentina. The work progress in Argentina was faster than I had expected. Before it was time for my return trip, I had already finalized everything. Thinking about the mess back home, I decided to give myself a holiday break. It was 22,000 kilometers away from my home country, perfect for summer. I experienced the warmth of Buenos Aires, saw the majesty of the Andes Mountains and the grandeur of the Iguazu Falls, and tasted the world-famous red wine and beef steaks. Before leaving Argentina, Peter called me to report some news from back home. "You did such an amazing job choosing the moving company before you left. Vanessa refused to leave, and they even packed her up and threw her out of the place. She comes to the studio every single day, annoying everyone around. I heard she's even been trying to win over your parents." Just as I heard him say she was planning to disturb my parents, I decided to go back and handle Vanessa for good. If it wasn't for the call, I would have been continuing my business trip elsewhere. The day after I returned, Vanessa came rushing over. The moment she saw me, she reached out and grabbed me, looking as if about to cry any second. Raising my eyebrow, I thought, was she trying to play the gentle and soft card now? "Daniel, I regret it. Can we remarry? I don't believe you would let me go that easily. I swear to you I won't meet Zach anymore. I'll love you wholeheartedly." I responded dismissively, "You're still living with your paramour, yet you tell me you won't see him anymore?" Upon hearing this, a joyful expression spread across her face. She thought I was jealous of Zach, and that was why I had been angry with her. "Daniel, I had no choice but to do this. You had me thrown out, and I had nowhere to go but his place. If you're upset, why don't you take me back? But I don't want to live in that house anymore. As a compensation, you have to buy me a bigger house. Otherwise, I will not forgive you." On hearing her I couldn't help but feel disgusted. Looking at her, she was still living in her fantasy where I was the one who couldn't live without her. Still, expected that her words would have the same effect on me. However, after speaking, when she observed my face, Vanessa finally understood what I meant, feeling insulted in turn. She raised her hand in anger to slap me, but I dodged it. Holding her wrist with some force, I said, "Vanessa, rather than pretending around here, you'd better think about how to deal with Zach's company losses. By the way, it's about time you repaid the 500,000 marriage gift that you've been dragging for so long." Vanessa's face turned red with anger, and she maliciously threatened me. "Don't push me, or you'll regret it." I tisked and walked away. I didn't see the vicious expression on Vanessa's face.